to Matador Memories. I'm your host, Carmen Ramos Chandler, and with me is Everto Ruiz, Professor Emeritus of Chicano Studies, who has been at CSUN nearly 60 years, either as a student or as a teacher. Welcome, Everto.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to talk to you, just diving right into the growth of Chicano Studies here at CSUN. We have one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Chicano Studies programs in the entire country. Let's talk about first how it developed and why was the development of Chicano Studies and subsequently the Chicano House so important, not just for our students, but for students across the country.
Great.
Let's start with the first one. How did it start?
Well, let's go back before the department.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to students.
Yeah.
So I arrived in 1966, as a social major, transferring from Los Angeles Valley College to San Fernando Valley State College. And I'm a resident of San Fernando all my life. And here I stuck together with some friends, some that I knew from San Fernando, others that were new to me, Latinos, mostly men, a few women, but there weren't very many of us, very few. And we, in 1967, we chartered an organization called United Mexican American Students, UMAS. And it's one of a number of chapters that are at almost the same time organizing themselves, chartering on various campuses in the LA area. We are in contact with each other, of course, but in our case here in Northridge, that's our beginnings. I might say I have, not a few years back, was able to get a hold of the original application for that chartering. So I have it's a copy of the original that Associated Students had. And so it happened that as I talked about history here on this campus, a student in my class said, maybe I work at Associated Students. Maybe I could look up that application. I said, please do. So sure enough, he comes back with a copy of it. And it's got everything, our sponsors. So this is in the fall of 1967 that we submit this application. The sponsors, a couple of faculty that were very supportive and sympathetic, that included Dr. Warren Furumoto, Julian Nava, and Dr. Dolores Litzinger. They're listed there in the application. And then we needed about 30 or so signatures of students. We couldn't get 30 Latinos, so we needed to get the help of sympathetic white and black African-American students, and they helped us to get those signatures and charter the organization, UMAS. So that's fall of 67. So in 1968 and thereabouts, we were continuing to organize. I might say, at this time we have no really space of our own. We have a table at the cafeteria, which is today the bookstore, of course, the only eating place on campus except for the roof. That's Sierra Hall. And that's our meeting place. We are coming and going throughout the day, but we're talking and, forming relationships and support and organizing. So at the same time, the Black Student Union is organizing their group as well. We're starting to push for the an EOP or some kind of recruitment program. And the state of California is starting to pass some legislation that would bring some of these programs about. So in 1968, people might remember or learn about some rather, strong tensions on campus that, to make a long story short, ended up with the takeover of the fifth floor of the administration building. And
what we now call Bahamian Hall.
Right. And so UMAS was, not involved with that directly, although once we found out about it on that very day, we all came to the building and we were present as that came down. So that's November of 68. And in the ensuing weeks, we are continuing to work with the administration, negotiating for, again, the new programs, especially EOP recruitment. And By January, tensions were still very strong, growing. The big climax was, of course, the showdown on January 9th, and a number of us were, of course, present at that gathering. And I don't know how many, it was 280 or so, subjected themselves, including myself and a few UMAS members, to arrest. Eventually it would end up in convictions. But the more important thing is that in the weeks to follow, we would continue to meet with the administration, with faculty, and work out a plan. Essentially, it was called the 12-point agreement. Now, this is what, number one on that 12-point agreement was the formation of some ethnic departments, ethnic studies, including the Mexican-American Studies Department, as it was called at the very beginning, and Pan-African Studies, and continued recruitment of students for the EOP. Other parts of the 12-point agreement were important as well, but this is what kind of gave birth to the department. Very important as well that in the fall of 67, before all of this confrontation, fall of 68, I should say, we're when I say we, some members of UMAS, there's about 5 or 6 members who have rented a house on the corner of Parthenia and Lindley. It was a house, a private home, and there we would meet weekly with invited guests that we would ask to come to lecture us. This included Dr. Rudy Acuna, but others that would come as well, sometimes with Bert Corona, Sal Castro, people involved in the activism of the day. And we were learning, that was Chicano studies for us, except that we were not getting any credit for it. It was under really a program called the Experimental College, listed under the university. But we met at that home.
But it was student driven. It wasn't.
It was student driven, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
What were the topics? Since I know many of the people you're talking about, what did they talk about?
Well, especially history and politics of Chicano, the Chicano experience. Because let me tell you, we were not getting it in our classes. I was a sociology major, and the closest I came to was maybe a class on race relations. And I took a history class with Dr. Julian Nava on the history of Mexico. That's the closest I could get.
Wow.
And I'm to be a social worker. I'm going to some related field of that sort. Of course, I know what it is to be a Chicano at that time, but others that are preparing themselves for those careers, they're not getting exposed to that in the regular courses. I've saved a catalog of those years, 67, 68, of Valley State College. We're not listed in there. We're not in the curriculum. So we know that what we're doing at that particular home on our own is something that eventually has to come into reality here. And that's why we push for it in the spring.
If the students who wanted to work in these communities were going to be effective professionals, they needed to know the culture and the history of the communities they were working with and their own.
Definitely.
So they could build bridges and communication and understand and empathy, all the things you do to be successful as a social worker or even a cop.
That's right. So Los Angeles was going to change. Yeah, all professions, all the majors should have been exposed to that and had the opportunity to take up courses that dealt with who we were, who we've been, what we're doing, and in all phases of life, education, politics, whatever it might be. And again, we're getting that on our own. These scholars who are coming to talk to us, and like Dr. Acuna, are coming on their own. We have no money. We have no funds to pay them. And so we're more than appreciative. We know where their heart is at. Yeah. But I have to say that we were driven as well by a social political movement of the time called El Movimiento. Yeah. And there's all kinds of other struggles that are going on that we're keeping up with, like the United Farm Workers and others. And so it's a big influence on us. It's a motivator. It inspires us to keep up with our 17 units. And keep in mind all of this, for the males, for the men especially, we're having to pass those 17, 18 units and do well because we're subject to the draft. Yeah. There's a war going on. And so at the same time, we're taking on, supporting ourselves. I'm an example of a person. I never filed for financial aid. Never. Why? I didn't know it was available.
Yeah.
I didn't know. As I tell my sister, we didn't know we were poor. That we met the poverty line, because we ate fine at home, and we had a roof over our head, and we lived in a neighborhood where everybody else was like that. But life was different than the people in Northridge. I got to say that, and so it starts to sink in on us that we have a lot of learning to do. So all this effort is going on, and in 1969, January, we're having that competition. It eventually, in a few weeks, gives birth to the establishment of a Mexican American Studies department, and we are insistent that the particular person that we want to head up that department is Dr. Rudy Acuna. Again, because of our past experience with him, and very capable, and as people would find out, very well-prepared individual to take on this kind of a development. Yeah.
What was it was there pushback? I know there was pushback from the administration. That's a given. But what was it like on campus from the students and some of the faculty?
Well, I think a good part of the campus was somewhat, you might say, indifferent. And there were some elements that were directly, posed to us and questioning our motives, even our presence on the campus, as if we were not the part of the youth of America that should be on a campus such as this. And some of us had gone through experiences. Like, for example, in 1967, as I was crossing the valley one time, I stopped at a drugstore in Balboa and Devonshire, to be exact. I don't forget these experiences. I went to a pharmacy and I was looking for my girlfriend at the time who had gone to that store. Make a long story short, I left the store and I went to another part of the mall there. And when I came back to where my car was located, there were police, LAPD, surrounding that pharmacy where I had walked through. And I don't know why, I just needed to find out what was going on. And so I approached a policeman. And when he saw me, I knew that they were looking for me. I don't know why. And they asked me for ID. But here's the thing. One of those policemen told me, when he said, "You still live at 709 Mission Boulevard, San Fernando?" "Yes, I do." And he says, "Don't you think you're a little ways from home?" And I was stunned. I mean, I had not been told that direct, I guess because I stayed in San Fernando in the East Valley area. But that pretty much told me that we were not expected to be in this area. And if we were subject to that kind of, suspicion, you might say. And we had to change that little by little. I mean, at the time, I was already attending here at the CSUN campus. And for an authority figure like that to tell you, you don't belong here. And we got other messages like that on the campus, of course. We had faculty in the Spanish department that when we proposed the EOP, wrote a letter, about 5 or 6 professors signed it, that in so many words said that the standards, you might say, of the university were going to come down if we were to implement a program like EOP. And they opposed it. They didn't want that kind of a program coming on campus.
Can you tell our listeners what EOP is?
The Educational Opportunities Program would be the program that would go and recruit students that showed high potential from various communities where we had little numbers of youth coming here. And, eventually my attitude developed into recognizing that this institution here was an institution that was owned by everyone, by all of us, by all the taxpayers, including my parents, my community. But we didn't send our youth over here. We sent our tax dollars to help educate other segments. And that's fine. I'm glad my mom and dad helped a lot of white students get educated. But they needed to see their son have an opportunity here as well. Those communities needed to have and benefit from an institution like this. So we're talking about ownership, we didn't want to own it by ourselves. We weren't claiming it to just have it serve us. But we wanted a a stake here. We wanted a part of the services and the benefits of a university education. And we had a right to be here. And our parents had a right to come over here. And in those early years, we stressed that our parents should come, our family should come, we should gather here. This is what brings us to the importance of a place like the Chicano House. When we started the Chicano Studies Department, the classes started to be offered in the fall of '69 with 5 professors. We very soon insisted on having a space where we could have, you might say, a place that would be somewhat informal, comfortable for our students and our new EOP students that were coming, and where they could bring family, where we could have events, where we wanted to build community. We wanted to build family. We were coming from all kinds of places: San Fernando, Pacoima, East Los Angeles, West LA, Ventura County, Imperial County. All these Chicanos were coming, and Chicanas were coming together, and we needed to form these bonds. And Chicano House was going to help us do that.
Not only did it form bonds, but it also sent a message that your children belonged here.
Right.
That education was rightfully something they could aspire to. Because, look, we have a home. You can find a home in the middle of, it was then, I guess, a predominantly white San Fernando Valley.
Definitely it was. And we wanted our families to feel that as well. I mean, it was tough for a lot of these families, especially the ones that were letting their young women come, to come and live here in dormitories away from the family. And, we wanted to do all we could to build a bond with them and a trust. And we wanted success, for the students. So we built it.
What type of programming or activities took part in that first? Was it called the Chicana House, or was it?
Actually, I think I was looking over some of the documents, and this is something that I'm doing now that I've retired. I'm going back and looking through some of my papers, and I'm running into those memos and documents that brought about some of these new places on campus, and the Chicano House was one. It was authorized in September of '69. It was called, I think, a resource center or Chicano Studies Center. That was the wording. We eventually called it Chicano House. And the first house was located somewhere between Halsted, on Etiwanda, between Halsted and Plummer. And right adjacent to it, there's a parking lot there today. And right adjacent to it was another house, and the Pan-African Studies Department had that. And when I say it, these were homes that had the kind of remnants of the residences that existed before the campus started to be built. And so that was our first house. And we had gatherings like tardeadas, classes, not formal classes at first, academic, but gatherings where we would meet with activists addressing different issues. We had, of course, gatherings commemorating certain important dates in our history, Cinco de Mayo, September 16th. I don't think Dia de los Muertos was quite at the very beginning, not there. We had tutoring going on. Now some of our courses in Chicano Studies as well required some additional space in addition to the classrooms that we had. I'm talking about, for example, the newspaper El Popo, the gathering that, putting it together, and I wasn't in the course, but I know that some of my fellow students, needed space to do all of that. The guitar class that I eventually would teach in the Chicano Studies Department, not in the music department and not in their facilities, but in spaces over here in the Sierra Hall complex. But I sometimes would teach classes over there as well, the Ballet Folklorico Aslan. And some of these groups started as non-unit classes at first. Eventually, they would come into our curriculum. So space, was really important, and Chicano House provided that for us. And so, this is Las Posadas, I'm remembering as well, and was another annual gathering there. And it was a home. Unfortunately, by May of 1970, there were some, again, there were issues on the campus and across America concerning the Vietnam War. I think this was the year and the time when there was the confrontation at Kent State.
Yeah.
And there were demonstrations across the country on campuses, including here. So on Cinco de Mayo, on the 5th of May, that first house was torched.
What?
Was put on lit on fire. Yes. Wow. So it happened in the evening. I remember distinctly. I by that time had formed a musical group, and we were going into different schools. And on that occasion, we went to perform at a youth authority facility out in Ontario. When we came back, we saw this.
A mariachi group? Or?
It wasn't mariachi yet. It was just a conjunto, about 4 musicians. It was part of our teatro group that we had as well. But we came back that evening, saw the fire engines, and started to learn about what had taken place sometime in the evening. And so they burnt that house down, and never found out who it was. But, there was opposition on campus, and there were those who wanted to send messages.
Yeah.
But the very next day, the whole community came together, and I have photos that show our unity of that day and our solidarity after being attacked in that manner. And we insisted on another house, which we eventually got soon after.
Is it the same house we have now?
No, it isn't.
Oh.
It was this Chicano house number. There were 4.
Oh my God!
Including the one we have now. So the second one was somewhere in the area where the Pan African Studies or the Omatsu house is. One of those houses we had for a short time, and then we insisted that we wanted it a little closer to the traffic on campus, and so then we got the Chicano House 3, more or less at the corner of I think it's Eddie Wanda and Plummer, and then soon after they built the business, I think it was a business building that's there. We had to give up that house, but we got the house right next to it. Again, part of the old houses or residences that were still on campus, and that's the one we have today.
And it's still a center of so much.
Yes, it is. It's still serving its purpose, but that's and in these years. Again, in addition to some of these events that I was telling you about that we had at the Chicano House, there was also in the 1970s even a parent co-op for childcare.
Before the campus adopted childcare.
Well, actually, there was a childcare center.
Really?
But it was hard to get kids in there sometimes. So some, especially women, I have to give them credit, worked and insisted to the department that they needed a place for the kids, so they could go to classes. So they organized themselves, and they formed a parent co-op, and they took turns, and they scheduled themselves so that childcare could take place there for them. And we did the best we could, but we also ran into challenges from the administration because there were some standards that we had to meet because of childcare taking place. But for I don't know how long it lasted, 2-3 years perhaps. It even served that purpose.
Wow.
So we did a lot with Chicano House in all kinds of ways to try to meet our needs. And the bottom line is trying to help students get through their education here.